Today on Coding 101, we are building an app from the ground up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Coding 101 is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
Coding 101 is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code C101. And by lynda.com. Lynda.com is an easy and affordable way to help you learn. Instantly stream thousands of courses created by experts on business, software, web development, graphic design, and more. For a free trial, visit lynda.com/C101. That's lynda.com/C101. Welcome to Coding 101. It's the show where we let you into the wonderful world of the dancing code monkey. I'm Father Robert Ballecer.
And I'm the dancing code monkey, Shannon Morse. Welcome to the show. Today we are going to get you all learned up on everything you need to know for the next 30 minutes to become a code master.
That's right. Now, Shannon, we're doing something a little strange, a little different. This is unique.
Kind of excited.
Kind of excited. So what we've decided to do is we're actually we're kind of ending the C# module, but not really, because we're actually extending it. I know, surprise. we will be building an app from the ground up in C# to show people how some of the different concepts that we've given them over the past 6 weeks can be used to create something that's functional across multiple platforms.
This is also a great excuse to give me less homework when I go on my honeymoon at the end of the month. So thank you for this excellent idea.
Yeah, well, I thought you probably don't want to be prepping for shows during your honeymoon.
Yeah, probably not.
This is a gift
so I
from all the code warriors.
And I bet you guys are super, super excited to learn how to build your own apps. I know I am. But first, we have some snubs compiled to get into.
Let's do that.
Yay! So I have my computer all set up with 3 different examples this week from our viewers. We got some really awesome examples in our Google Plus community. Of course, if you guys want to visit it, go over to Google Plus, sign up, and go over to bit.ly/twitcoding101. So we got this awesome one from Ayesh. So Ayesh basically gives us an array, a sample of an array. So his code is really, really, really simple. So you basically just go over here. You see that it's called namespace, Ayesh example, regular class program, that's just what's already in there,
right,
as usual, and then static void main string arguments. So he has an int called C101 array, and then he creates a new int with 10 different variables in it. So 10 different
nice values.
Yeah, values that'll come out of it. Each time that he inputs it, it's going to increase by 1, and then you should end up with 10 different ones that output onto the console. So when I build the solution and hit start, simply
Boom.
gives me a nice little array.
Which is what
Very
we wanted.
easy.
We wanted people to be able to initialize an array, to fill it, and then output it.
Exactly. Now I also had a really, really cool one also from, go away Darren, gosh, I know you're not available for interviews. So the second one is from Rick, and Rick basically said he wanted to create one that was a iterator demo. So he basically takes collections and gives us examples in an array, in a list, and so on and so forth. So I'll go ahead and show you that one as well, the iterator demo. Now this one is really, really long. His code is extremely long, but he also included a bunch of different notes in here for each and every bit that he created. So you can scroll through his code and completely understand exactly what he's doing in here. Now when I go ahead and hit run, go ahead and build that solution. Okay, so I have to rebuild it every time I do this, but you can see what he's doing here. He's doing a Fibonacci array, a list, an iterator, and manual input. So I'll just go ahead and do number 2 for list, and then hit enter. Oops, let's do that again.
There we go.
2. How many numbers you want to generate? There we go.
I'll just say 13.
13, okay. Hit enter. Okay, so it generates each of the numbers and then it outputs
There we go.
your
That's
Fibonacci sequence.
Fibonacci sequence.
Then you hit enter to exit. If I hit it again, go ahead and run it. Let's do number 1 this time, and we'll do 13 again. Generates them again, gives you another list. Well, in that case, it was an array. Now if I do number 3, I'll do the same amount, 13. Now look at the difference with this one. Pretty cool, right? So it
what's it doing
generates in
there?
between each one.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is an iterator.
Yes, yes.
And
So that's
after
first.
it-
That's rather than creating an array of numbers and just dumping it out. That's actually recalculating in between each
Exactly.
one. And that's very cool.
And
Nice.
then number 4 is a manual out.
Oop, there.
There we go. So I'll do 13 again. And then this time it says current number requested, and it gives you 2, 3, all the way up
All
to
the
the same
sequence
number,
numbers,
233. So each time you're going to end up with the same kind of output, but they're put on your screen in different ways depending on what kind of collection or list or array that you put it into, if that makes sense.
Oh, and again, very simple programs that require very simple algorithms. But what we're trying to make our users do is, can you take a data set, something that it's a known quantity, and find different ways to use it? And anytime that you can iterate it in a different way, it means that you're learning a little something else about coding, which is what we like.
And we had one last one, and this one again is from Joe. Joe keeps giving us really good examples.
Joe's
we love Joe. So Joe has continued on the podcasting app for us. This time he did a Xaml-only podcast viewer. So if I go ahead and run that code, you'll see a little bit of a difference in here. Let me pull up here. Let's see. I'll bring up the code for you.
Joe.
Okay, so
going all XAML-y on us.
he went very XAML-y. So he discovered that you don't have to have all the fun extras in here. You can just create a XAML output and make it look like something like this. So we have a complete new window for it. We have some kind of podcast that plays, and then all the different ones are listed over here on the side.
Yeah, and again, this is cool because he's playing around with the view in the view model.
Exactly. Yes.
View.
So we had a lot of questions about that, and our Google Plus community was really, really helpful in explaining not only that, but also the differences between lists and arrays. So if you guys are still confused, I know I was a little confused after last week's episode as well, check out our Google Plus community because I got some really, really good answers in there as far as all the differences with all the different terms that we've been using here.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Lots of fun.
Our audience always amazes me because there's always people in there who are like, you know what? I wonder what would happen if I did this instead. And that's how I learned. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there who learn the traditional way. You know, they went to a class and they did this and did this. That's my background. Yeah, that's my background. But then you expand by breaking things and stretching them and making them do things they weren't expected to do.
It's so much more fun when you can break things.
I like breaking things.
That's so bad.
But you know, sometimes you don't want to break things. You want to be able to present them just kind of nicely, right?
True, yeah, very true.
On the internet, you know this, we're both people who make our living on the internet, kind of, interwebs.
My beer money.
Yeah, definitely. You need to make sure that you've got a site that attracts people. And that means that you're going to have the domain that you want. It means that you're going to have the content you want. And it means that it's going to have to be up and it's going to have to be functional. It's going to have to look good.
Yeah.
This isn't the 90s anymore. You can't get away with just an HTML file that says, hi, I'm under construction.
Aw, man. No more GIF animated
No more
GIFs.
animated GIFs or GIFs. We have to cover both because people get mad if we don't. You know, sometimes you just want to get your great idea, your portfolio, your pictures, your videos online. You don't care about any of that back-end stuff. That's why we're happy to have Squarespace. Now, what is Squarespace, Shannon?
I love Squarespace. They're an all-in-one place for everything that you need to build a website.
Exactly. It's that one-stop shop, which is what we like so much. Squarespace gives you one place where you can go, pay a low monthly fee, and have everything taken care of for you. No back-end add-ons, no wondering whether or not I've got the right framework up, no wondering whether or not I can get the domain that I need and make sure that it's paid for each and every single year. Squarespace takes care of all of that for you and just lets you create, which is really what you want to do. Now, I've been using Squarespace over the last couple of years because I deal with a lot of non-tech savvy organizations that, you know, they have content, they have ideas that they want to get out to the world, but they don't have an on-staff programmer, they don't have an IT person. Squarespace is perfect for that. They'll take care of all the tech. All you have to take care of is getting things up that people actually want to look at. Now, they are constantly improving their platform, which is one of the things I like about Squarespace. They don't sit back on their laurels saying, well, we've got a good service, let's just leave it there. They're always giving you more functions, more features, more templates, more beautiful things to look at. They've got 25 beautiful templates for you to start with, and you can customize them to get that exact look that you want. They also recently added a logo creator tool, which is great for individuals or small businesses who want to create their unique identity online, but they can't pay a graphic designer. It's a great way to get up and running with your Squarespace. It's also easy, crazy easy to use. But of course, if you want help, Squarespace has live chat and email support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Plus, they've got a completely redesigned customer help site for easier access to self-help articles and video workshops. If you need a step-by-step on how you get your content on Squarespace, they'll be there for you. They also have e-commerce available with all their subscription plan levels, which includes the ability to accept donations, which is great for nonprofits or, for example, setting up a wedding registry. Anytime you need people to be able to give you resources, Squarespace will be with you, backing you up. It's also inexpensive at only $8 a month starting price. With a free domain, if you sign up for a year, it's not going to break the bank, and it's mobile ready. This is one of the things I really like about Squarespace, and that is if you've ever designed a site and it hasn't looked right on a tablet, but it does look good on a desktop, but maybe not good on a phone, that's because it's not dynamic. Squarespace takes care of all of that. You just create the content, and they will automatically adjust it so it looks right on a phone, on a tablet, on a desktop, on a smart TV. No matter who's looking at it, it's gonna look right. Now, even their code is beautiful. This is important to us on Coding 101. That's right, if you take a look behind the curtain, the code that makes Squarespace so beautiful is not just a jumble of junk, it's code that I would write. And that makes me know that they've put the time into making sure that they're giving me the product I'm paying for. Now, Squarespace includes their hosting, which means there's no reason for you not to try them. Right now, start a free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your website today. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use their offer code C101 and get 10% off and to show your support for Coding 101. We thank Squarespace for their support of Coding 101. A better web awaits, and it starts with your brand new Squarespace. Thanks, Squarespace.
Thank you.
Shall we get into some app action here?
Yes.
Ivory Tower is going to be a little bit different.
I'm ready.
A little bit different because we wanted to take a step back. We're not talking about specific coding techniques. We're not talking about specific functions, specific methods, APIs, none of that. I mean,
but I thought this was coding courses.
This is coding, but you know this. Anytime you start a new project, the best thing that you can do is actually to take a step back and look at all the things you need to do, because then you can figure out how you're going to do them.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to kind of think outside the box.
You have to think outside of the box.
Look at the big picture.
And for an app, I mean, we've been saying this since day one. The big challenge of coding is not learning what pieces of code do what. The big challenge is learning how to take a real-world big problem and break it down into smaller pieces that can be solved with code, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take an app, a typical app that maybe you might create your first time out. Something not too difficult, but also not so easy that it just prints out a list of something.
Okay.
We want to create something that people might actually buy or might actually download because it sounds interesting. So I'm thinking, how about like a task manager?
I love tasks managers.
To do. Your list of the things
I use them
you have
all the time.
Right?
Those are some of the most useful and productive apps that I have.
Right. Now, when we're considering our app, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that it's a little bit distinguished. It's got to be somewhat unique. I can't make a task manager just like every other task manager on the internet. Otherwise, there's no reason for people to download it.
So we need to come up with some essential features that it would include.
Right. So, for example, what if we made a task manager, a to-do list, that also let you take pictures of a task? So like,
and then you could include those in the task list.
Let's do that. Yeah. So you're walking around and you're like, oh, look, the lamp is broken. So you take a picture of the lamp and you attach it to a task. So now you have a visual representation of something you have to do.
What about if you could include a location with your tasks?
I like that. Yeah, that's great, because then I could map out my day. Let's say, oh, you know what, I'm going to be in San Jose earlier today, then I'm going to end up in Petaluma, and I'm going to end up in San Francisco. What if it could cluster my tasks near those geographic locations? So I know, well, when I'm in San Jose, I need to do all my San Jose tasks. When I'm in San Francisco, do all my San Francisco tasks. And when I'm in Petaluma, I just sleep in the no-hole.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, if we're going to include locations on there, I don't want like crazy people showing up at my doorstep. So I want to have some kind of user authentication procedure so it knows who I am whenever I log into it.
Right. Oh, great. Okay, so now we've got it. Now we understand what our app's going to be. Our app is going to be a task manager that's going to include the ability to take pictures, to use location data, and to have some sort of authentication.
Would we need some kind of backend for it, like a server?
Probably, and that's actually this. Now we're getting into the true first step. Once we figured out what our app is, we got to break down its functions.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's no good just to say, oh yeah, I'm going to have an app that does all these things. What are the things it's actually going to do? So Shannon, I'm going to throw this over to you.
Okay.
If I wanted to create that, if I wanted to create a task manager that can take pictures of my tasks, that can associate with geographical location, that can authenticate so that I can either choose to share or not share, what are the actual functions of a task? And I like to go from the inside out. So start on the phone and then end up what's off the phone.
Well, I need to securely communicate those.
You do? Okay.
I need to... If I'm starting on my phone, I need to make sure that nobody's going to be able to do a man-in-the-middle attack and see whatever I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that would actually be off the phone, though. So that's starting on the other side. But,
yeah,
that's okay. No, so that's our demarcation point, right? So we know at some point we're jumping off from phone to outside.
Right.
But what would be the other functions of this app?
Oh, it would use your GPS.
Okay, yeah, it's got to use a
camera?
GPS. It's got to use a GPS. It's got to use a camera. It's also got to be able to maintain the task list, right?
Yes.
At some point. So that's the main.
So it stays memorized.
It stays memorized. So it's got the ability to make tasks. It's got the ability to take pictures. It's got the ability to use GPS coordinates. It's got the ability to have an authentication process. And you already mentioned it has the ability to communicate with the outside world.
So would we want it to communicate with like Yahoo or Google or something?
Well, that's now we're starting to look at the second thing. So once I've got my list of functions that I actually want to include inside of my app, I have to start looking at what are the resources that are available for me to do that.
Right.
And when I look at functions, I look from inside out. What's on the device to what's off the device. Whenever I start looking at resources, I go from the outside in. I look at what's available off the device, and then I look at what's available locally.
So one thing you could do is, if you want to include two-factor authentication, you could use the Google Authenticator, because it's already made.
Exactly, right. So I can use the Google APIs. Google has some great APIs that are available for me to use. Just like when we were using classes that we didn't create.
Yeah.
If I can use someone else's API, it means I don't have to program all that.
You might as well do it.
Might as well do it, right. And if I didn't do that, it would mean that I'd have to build my own back end.
Right.
I don't really feel like building...
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No.
It's too much work.
It's too much work, and Google's server farms are way more parallel than mine will ever be. Let's also talk about, in terms of resources, I need to have my GPS, and I need to have my camera.
Right.
So those are three things that I absolutely want. I want to be able to access someone else's back end because I don't want to build it. I need to access on my phone my camera and my GPS. So now I've got my app description, I've got my app functionalities, I've got the resources I need to do it. Here is actually the fun part. I have to create the logic tree for the app.
The logic tree?
Yeah. The logic tree is...
How does that work?
We talked about this before. Remember when we were discussing how you would take a binary sequence and turn it into a decimal number? Right, and it was all that, well, if this is this, then I have to do that. And if this is that, then I have to do this.
I do remember that.
Right, you could actually flowchart it. You can say, okay, well, I'm going to need this, 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 and then the phone has to do that, 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 and the back end has to do this, this, this. Now, we're going to give a super generalized logic tree because we don't want to get down into the minutia, because that would be silly.
Right.
But considering what I just said I want my app to do, and considering what I just said my app should have resources for, let's look at the logic tree. The first thing that the app needs to do is it has to connect to and authenticate with Google's APIs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's going to be the start of everything.
Okay.
That's where my data is stored. That's where the application starts.
Okay.
Okay. Once I've authenticated, I need to get a list of my tasks from that API.
Okay.
Because remember, I'm assuming that I'll be able to sync across multiple devices.
Right.
Which means my data cannot be stored on my device alone. It'll
be stored somewhere else, and you'll just be able to access it anytime you open the app.
Right, right. Now, we know from what Lou did with using external data sources, and actually from what Patrick Delahanty did with Pearl, that when you get that information, that's one thing. It's just like a big string. It's a jumble of data. I need to turn it into something usable.
Okay.
So now that I've authenticated...
So this is where the GUI comes in.
Well, yeah. So I've authenticated. I've gotten the data. Now I have to turn it into something useful. I have to turn it into a list of tasks, my task list. Right?
But you have to be able to interact with those different tasks.
Well, that will come later. I will come later. So because right now we're still doing all the back end stuff. So this is preparing it for use. Now I have to interact with it.
Okay.
So once I've gotten that ready, I now have to present it to the user, right?
Right,
Because
yeah.
there has to be some sort of interactivity.
Yeah, yeah.
Because otherwise it's just a stupid list.
So you want to be able to delete tasks.
Yep.
You want to be able to copy them or maybe
Copy,
duplicate them. What else?
You
Add
gotta create 'em.
locations. Yeah, be able to create them. Maybe like do color code of the different tasks. What else?
Warnings. You need warnings,
yeah.
scheduling warnings. So if I have a
Scheduling
task
warnings,
that's supposed
that's
to
a good
happen
one.
at a specific time,
Yeah.
or if I'm doing that whole geolocating thing, it should tell me, hey, you're in this area, you have a task scheduled for this area.
That's a good idea.
Maybe it's time for you to take
Oh,
care
I
of
like
it.
this. Why doesn't this exist already?
It should. Well, we're going to write it, right?
Including your photos in the tasks.
Right, and including
That needs to
the
be
GPS
available
coordinates
in the GPS
task.
coordinates.
Right. So that's all the interactive level. So that's
Okay.
the stuff that has to happen between the user and the device and the API.
Ooh, that's a good one. Dallas in the chat room says voice input would be nice.
Voice input would be
That's
nice.
a
Right,
great
yeah.
one.
Why not attach a voice memo
like that.
to your list of tasks? And of course, the last thing, and when I say the last thing, this is going to keep happening in a cycle because we don't do
So
it
it's
just
kind of like a
once.
loop.
It's looped over and over until I tell it to stop. The last bit would be to make sure that any changes I make, any pictures I attach, any GPS coordinates
Oh,
that I do,
they need to save.
any tasks I delete because I've done it,
Right.
I have to save it back up into that back-end server.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
So that's my logic tree. That's what I have to do. Now, if we were doing the logic tree for real, the board would be huge because each of those has a process that's attached for it. So
Yeah.
for example, I want to access the camera on my phone so I could put a picture. Well, I need to access a particular API that will give me access to the camera. Once I have the picture done, I have to access another API that will bind it to the data that's coming from my data source, which can then push it back to Google Task. We're not going to cover
My
that
goodness,
because
that sounds confusing.
the show would be too long.
Yeah.
The last thing we have to do, we go through our logic tree and we make every step of the logic tree reality. We have to find a way to do it. And Brian, do you have the links that I put in the document? The first thing would be to get the APIs. Now, our code warrior Lou was wonderful enough to gather these resources. The first one is the NuGet package that allows .NET programs to access many of the Google APIs. This is it right here.
It's a nugget.
It's a NuGet. But this gives me a very easy way, if I'm writing in .NET, to do an include, which will suddenly allow me to access everything in the Google API. Now,
Awesome.
Lou's going to have to go through the process of actually applying for access to the API.
Okay.
Yeah, but we will let him do that. Now, once we get this NuGet, this package, it will allow us to access the Google APIs. And if you go ahead and show off those Google APIs, there's a crazy amount of them. These are all of the APIs that you have access to. And if you scroll down towards T, you'll see that one of them is called tasks. You have to scroll a little higher, Brian, because it's hidden by the bug. There you go. Tasks. The tasks API. The tasks API is the part that is specifically going to deal with our application. We want a way to store tasks, a way to modify tasks. It's all built in right there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Now we've
You don't
got.
have to do any work yourself. That's great.
Actually, that's kind of true, right? I mean, we're going to be borrowing all these bits of code from other people. Now that we've got that down, we're going to have to go talk to our code warrior to find out how we actually turn this concept into a reality. But before we do that,
Before we do,
we gave you a nice fuzzy walkthrough on how we would develop an app, but there is a organization that could actually fill in the minutia, all those things we didn't talk about, and help you develop your own app. Shannon, who might that be?
oh, I know. I call them lynda.com.
Woot.
Easy to use, super affordable, and they are the place to go for thousands of courses on everything that you ever need to know about pretty much anything. Software, web development, graphic design, and so much more. Lynda.com works directly with industry experts and software companies to provide timely training, often the same day that new versions or releases actually hit the market. So you are actually up to speed every single day that you go back to their site and you want to learn new stuff for anything that hits the news. All courses are produced at the highest quality, so they're not like, homemade videos on YouTube with low audio specs and not very good video quality. These are excellent courses, and they are broken down into bite-sized pieces so you can learn at your own pace. And you can learn from start to finish, or you can just find a really quick answer. And their tools also include searchable transcripts. So, hey, I mentioned you can find a quick answer. Just look in the transcripts. You can just hit Control F and find whatever you're looking for. They have playlists and certificates of course completion. So you can publish those to your LinkedIn profile, which can definitely help you get a job in whatever kind of thing that you're trying to learn about. So you're an actual professional in your field. So whether you're a beginner or you're advanced, lynda.com has courses for all experience levels. And you can learn while you're on the go. So, hey, I'm going on my honeymoon later this month. I want to be able to get those videos while I'm on the plane. So I'll just connect on my iPhone, my iPad, or my Android device and watch videos while I'm on the go. And all this can be done on one low monthly price of $25. That gives you unlimited access to over 100,000 video tutorials, and that number just keeps on going up. Premium members also get an annual plan. They can download courses to their iPhone, their iPad, or their Androids, and they can watch them offline as well. Premium plan members can also download project files and practice along with the instructor. I've been using lynda.com for years. I've used them for everything from photography expertise, so I learned a whole bunch about photography and even how to build my own website. So they're really, really handy for pretty much anything, especially if you have a tech question. If it has to do with programming, this is the place to go. Lynda.com also has courses on up and running with CentOS Linux. I love CentOS, it's so fun. Practical cybersecurity, Amazon Web Services essential training, and up and running with Symfony 2 for PHP. So hey coders, check it out. Very, very good. And for any software that you rely on, lynda.com can help you stay current with all software updates. And you can learn the ins and outs to be more efficient and more productive. And we've got a special offer for you to access all of the courses free for 7 days. That's free learning for a whole week. Go visit lynda.com/C101 to try lynda.com free for 7 days. That's lynda.com/C101. And of course, we thank Lynda so much from the bottoms of our hearts for supporting our little show over here.
And you know I love Lynda. And you
I do
know,
too.
I mean, I use them as
I've
my
used
reference.
them a ton.
I will say this, though. I download videos to my devices all the time. If you're downloading your videos to your device for your honeymoon, you're doing it wrong. I'm just gonna
It's a very long flight. It's a very, very long flight.
Yes. All right, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Actually, you might be able to brush up on GoPro basics.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Because you're going to be, I expect
My
beautiful
underwater
video.
snorkeling with GoPro basics.
It's going to be, seriously, it's gorgeous out there.
I can't wait.
That's
anyway.
clear water. Anyway, this is the time where we don't talk about honeymoons. We talk about Code Warriors. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome back to the show Mr. Lou Maresca, Senior Software Developer from Microsoft. Lou Maresca, thank you for coming back to be our Code Warrior.
Hi.
Thanks, guys. Ready to build an app today.
Ready to build an app.
I'm so
Lou,
excited about this.
It's funny because everyone talks about building an app right now. We were building these things way before they were called apps. These are just programs. They just happen to fit on a screen somewhere.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about what are the basics, the fundamentals of going through an app. And you know this. Anytime you spend enough time at the beginning actually talking about the process and mapping it out and charting it so that you know it needs to do this, 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 and this, it makes the process so much easier. In fact, in the chat room, they were talking about this thing of feature creep. In fact, it was even happening while we were talking about it. People were like, well, wouldn't it be nice if it did voice annotation? Oh, and what if it could control a robot that did your task
Unlimited
for
possibilities.
you? Yeah, if you map it out and you say, these are the things I wanted to do, it allows you to get through the program without constantly adding new features so that at the end, you end up with bloat.
That's right, bloat.
So, Lou, we talked a little bit about gathering these resources, and one of the principal issues was getting access to APIs. Can you take us through that process? Because Google is a great place to get APIs. We've got issues with Google right now, but it's still a good place to learn. Could you show us what the process looks like?
You bet. So like one of the, I mean, I kind of thought about it for a while, and there's a lot of different places we can go to get APIs. Google's one of them. Microsoft's got a bunch. I think Google's is a little bit, has some structured APIs you can do like around tasks and like you were talking about calendar and email and all that stuff. So it's really easy to kind of get to. And I'm actually going to show you how to set it up and get going. So if you actually show my screen real quick, the first thing that you're going to want to do is obviously you're going to want to log into your Gmail account if you have one. If you don't have one, go and create one. And then you notice like up here in the left-hand corner, you'll be able to go through your Gmail, your contacts, your tasks. And so down here, if you click on tasks, you notice this little guy down here in the corner pops up.
I use that all the time.
Yep. You can create tasks there. You can create a task. You can, set the task when its due date is and all that stuff. And you can create different lists of tasks. So it's basically broken down to like a small hierarchy for you. But what I want to do is I want to basically be able to access all this. So let's say I have a whole bunch of tasks in here, like, grocery list, or maybe I need to do something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and navigate to a page called the consoledevelopers.google.com, console.developers. And you notice I already have an app here called Coding 101 Apps, but I'm going to go through, and the first thing you want to do is you're going to create a project. And so I need to give it a name, so I'm just going to call it Task Apps. And you have a project ID. It's usually supposed to be unique. I'm just going to call it Task Apps 1 for right now. And then down here, you'll notice it's going to start doing this background process. And what it's doing in the background is Google's creating some space for you. And it's free space at this point in time until you start using it too much. And then they're going to start charging you for it. But for right now, they're going to create some free space for you. And if that doesn't come back, then I'll just show you the Coding 101. Okay, so it came back, and now it created this special dashboard called Task Apps. And what I can actually go through here now is I need to set up the app. So what do I want? I want to set up what I actually want to do with it. So first thing I'm going to do is go to APIs and auth, and I can turn off and on just hundreds. I think there's about 100 APIs here that Google can do. Yeah, it's crazy. So
that's
they make
cool. So you can do other things with Google as well, like you can use their Messenger and stuff like that.
That's right. Yeah, even Google.
And actually, Lou, the important point here is this is actually why you'd want to use the API.
Yeah.
And we're using Google, but you could use Microsoft's, you could use Yahoo's. There's a bunch of different services, cloud services that give you APIs to get hooks into their services. You want to do this because, as Lou showed you at the beginning, it's so easy to use Google services on your desktop. If you can use it on your desktop, it means there's an easy way for you to get information into it, and then you can write an application to use those same data points on your phone, on your tablet, or wherever. That's the strength of using the API of an established cloud player.
That's right. Yeah, so they make it super easy. Like basically all you have to do is you click. Like some of these are on by default, so I'm just going to turn these off because I don't need Google Cloud Storage and any of that stuff. I just want to get access to my tasks. So I'm going to turn those all off. And then in here, I'm just going to type in tasks, and it's going to show me, there's the task API. So I'm just going to, it says I'm allowed 10,000 requests per day. I think I'm probably going to be under that. So I'll go ahead and click on. And so that's going to enable that guy. And of course, it shows me my quota, like how much of those 10,000 you've gotten so far, which is kind of cool.
So would that be like the users of your application, that many?
So that's a good question. So basically what that is how many times I either go and get the list of tasks, or I create a task, or that kind of thing. So every time I make a request to Google API, it's going to kind of take it away from my tally.
Okay.
So yeah, so if you have a lot of users then using the same app, then yeah, you're probably going to at some point get over that quota, which means then they're going to ask you to start paying for it. And it's not going to be that much, but it's going to be the point where now you're a real app and you need to start paying for space.
Yeah, this is really for the developing side. If you're just developing, unless you're developing with a huge team, you're not going to go over that quota. Once you realize you've got a product, then you can actually negotiate with Google to say, I need full-time access to the API. I'm going to have millions of hits every hour. What do I need to pay you?
And these are pretty reasonable. Like if you're just building an app for yourself, like at this point, we're just building it for ourselves right now. We're not here to sell it. I mean, this is pretty reasonable. Like I could probably get by using this for like an entire month without having to worry about overhitting that 10,000 request mark. So one of the things that we pop over here, if the next thing we want to do is once we've actually created the status on for that task API, we can actually go to the what we call the content screen. And what this is going to do is I'm going to need to choose my email address that I want. So there's a drop down, you can type it in there, and you're going to give it a product name. So I'm just going to call it Tasks App for right now. And that's really all you have to do. Then you're going to hit save, and then now it's going to set everything up for you. So it's just as easy as that. But now what I want to do is I want to give the ability, like you guys were talking about, to authenticate the user. So the way you do that is you click on credentials here. And there's two different ways of doing it. There's what we call OAuth, which I think we already talked about that a little bit with the social app that we built with Facebook and Twitter. All these cloud services nowadays offer this OAuth protocol to allow you to authenticate. It's just sometimes overly complex, but they make it pretty easy to do here. So what you do is you need to basically click on the Create New Client ID. It's going to ask you what type of app you have. And in our case, we're going to just do Installed App. And it's going to ask you what platform. I found it kind of funny that Windows Phone wasn't in here, but we're going to go ahead and choose other and create client. And really, if all of these kind of create similar stuff, I think Android's a little different because they have some code within the platform that allows you to make it even easier, but the rest of them are pretty much the same. So I'm just going to click Create Client ID. And what you'll notice is over here is, and I'm actually going to delete this after the show so you guys can't use mine, but but what it'll do is it creates this unique secret hash that I'm going to use within my app. And so it also creates a client ID so they can locate your app. This is basically your Tasks app in a big hash, and it has a URL, obviously, Google user content at the end. So that's really it. Now I'm set up. I'm ready to go, and they know what I'm going to be using. I'm using Task API. I'm going to be authenticating, and I'm going to be using this code. Pretty simple so far, right?
Yay. Okay, simple so far.
Yep. So now it's time for me to actually start using their API. So that's kind of the key. Now we have to kind of pop over to Visual Studio.
So now we're getting into the code.
Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
So the first thing is, so there's all these fancy frameworks, like for instance Xamarin. There's one called it's called Cross or Xcross, something like that. There's a bunch of different frameworks that allow you to build an app once in C# and then can kind of convert it over to these other platforms. We talked about it before, creating an Android app or an iOS app.
So this isn't going to be like a regular console application like we've been doing, right?
Right. Exactly. But what we're going to do is, like Padre talked about, is you want to get the logic down before you start building the fancy UIs or user experience. And the reason why is because once you get that down, then it's really easy to kind of build a UI on top of it. And sometimes you have to change the underlying infrastructure a little bit, the code underneath, but not too much. Normally, it's better to start with the nitty-gritty before you kind of move up to the UI. So what we're going to do is we are going to still build a console app, but what I'm going to choose is there's one called a class library portable, and this is something Microsoft's created called a portable class library that allows you to move it between, let's say, Windows Phone or Windows Store app, or and Windows 10 is kind of all about this. Is moving it across any device that they offer Windows for. And so what this also allows you to do is then run this code through Xamarin or these other cross frameworks that allow you to compile for iOS and Android, and it will automatically just work for you. So that's kind of the key. So we're going to start with a console app. So I'm just going to call it this task app. I'm going to hit create. And once that gets created, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another project to this. So this is just the little app that allows me to test it. It's kind of like, I like to call it my test app. But then I'm going to add another project, add new project. And then in here, I'm going to go to, again, but instead I'm going to choose class library. I'm just going to call it task library. And this is a PCL, or a class library portable. And does that make sense so far? I think, yes. So portable class. So pretty simple. So now it's going to ask me, where do you want it to go? Like, how portable do you want it to be? And so I'm going to say, hey, I want it to be .NET 4.5. So this is a Windows app, like desktop app, Windows 8.1, Windows Store app, Windows Phone app. And what this also allows me to do then is if I choose all three of these, it's basically pretty much every platform Microsoft offers. So they are allowing you to build for this library to run on all of these different platforms, but also allows you to build inside of Xamarin too. So you can build it for iOS and Android. So I'm going to click OK. And now I got this simple class library.
Oh.
And pretty simple. And so then I'm going to go into the property. I'm just going to make sure that the frameworks match. I think I chose .NET 4.5.1, and that's I want to make sure they match, because otherwise you'll get an error saying it doesn't work. But that was just the properties of this console app that I created. So now you can notice over here, they call this the solution package, solution file. It's got two libraries. One is my console app, and one is my portable class library. The one that we're going to put all of our code in is going to be the task library. We're just going to use the console app to test it.
Okay.
So pretty easy. So what we're going to do now is, now I'm going to, first thing I'm going to do is make sure that my console app can call into this portable class library. So I'm going to add what we call an add a reference. And it's going to be right here. It says projects. There's another one called task libraries. I'm going to check the box and hit OK. And now magically down here, add task library. So now anything that I build in this library, I can access it in this library. Pretty easy.
Oh, that's cool. So you don't have to reuse it in both places?
Yes, correct. So basically, I don't have to rewrite the code duplicate. It's called code duplication. I don't have to do that. And I can basically just write all my code now in here. So now we have to start. Let's start talking about Google, how we access its API. So for me, like Padre's shown, there's a bunch of places you could go to learn about it, but it's tough to find all the documentation sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't pertain to .NET. In Google's case, though, they actually have .NET, Java, and Objective-C. They have code samples for all three, but there are libraries, and we talked about this last time, inside of NuGet that allows it to make it even easier. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some NuGet libraries. So I'm going to go to Tools, and you guys remember NuGet, right? The package manager.
We do.
Of course.
Very easy to search in NuGet.
Yes. So that's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to search. So I'm going to go to NuGet Manager, and it's going to NuGet.org. And what I can do in here is I can just type in Google API. Hopefully this just returns quickly. Yes. So you'll notice that there's a couple that you can choose from in here. But what I want to choose is, let's see, which one do we choose before? I have another sample one over here. So we chose Google APIs with an S. I'm going to do that. There we go. So there's one called Core. There's one called Client. And so what we want to do is we're going to notice that the client one also needs Core. So I'm going to choose Install the client one. And it's going to ask me which one of my projects. I'm going to say both of them. It's going to easily install all that stuff.
Right.
And then,
so what we've done so far, Lou, is once you've gotten access to the API, so you did everything that you need to be able to use the Google's external interface into their cloud services.
Right.
We're now using NuGet to get this package that will allow us to easily interface with the API rather than programming our own hooks into it. NuGet will do it. We'll just have to use the documentation for NuGet.
Exactly. Right. And so now, so I got the API to actually talk to all the different, I got the DLL or the libraries to talk to all the different Google APIs, but I also want the one for tasks. So there's one called Google APIs tasks too. So I just type that in there and I click install. And again, it's going to ask me which project and I click OK. And again, it's adding everything for me. So I think I got everything. I think that should be everything for now. So now I click OK. So now I'm already like added so much stuff in here that I'm almost there to basically start calling and accessing tasks. Makes it pretty easy. And so what we can do here is now it's time to kind of start constructing our logic. Like, what do we want to do with this program? And I think you guys talked about getting tasks, getting lists of tasks, creating tasks,
right,
updating tasks, that kind of thing, right?
So yeah, the first thing we have to do is we have to connect to and authenticate with Google's API. Then we want to get the list of tasks from Google's API. Then we want to be able to turn that list into an actual task list.
Right. So let's do that real quick. So I'm just gonna rename this because I'm gonna call it Task Manager, and you can just do right click and go to Refactor, Rename, and you can rename it, make it pretty easy. And I also want to rename the file, so I make sure you guys can follow. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a now there's a way to do this. It's called build a constructor, but I'm just going to make a method called initialize right now. And it's not going to, all it's going to do is, like you said, it's going to allow me to call into the Google APIs, or actually authenticate to the Google APIs. So the first thing is there's a special broker, they call it a web broker, but basically allows me to it's called a web authorization broker, and allows me to authenticate. And so this is inside the Google API code. So I'm going to kind of pop back over here so I don't have to type so much. So the Google broker allows me to basically authenticate using my client ID and my client secret that I created. And so if we go back over here, all we're going to do is we're going to copy the client ID and the client secret into my app, and I'm going to create an object called client secrets, and that's inside the Google API's auth.oauth namespace. We talked about namespaces a couple weeks ago. And so you're going to create a client secrets, and then I'm just going to put inside that client secrets, I'm going to put so like I can basically copy and paste what I get from Google's dashboard here. I don't know if you guys can still see this. So I'm going to copy and paste those in here. I already have mine in here. Mine are in another part of the project. This way you can't see what they actually are. But I pretend like I basically copied them in here. So I could put like strings, and I could put a whole bunch of stuff in here. And then I also copied the client secret in here too. So let's say I copied all the secret. And so now I have my client secret, and now I need to basically authenticate. It's time to authenticate. So I do that by using this, what we call a Google Web Broker. And so I'm going to, basically the Google Web Broker has this method called authorize, and it asks for the client secret. So I'd add the client secrets. And it asks for things that I can do with it. When I can actually do with it, I need to give it a list of stuff that I need to do with it. And that, in that case, I'm going to tell it that I actually want to just use the task API. That's all. That's it. So basically, what it's going to do is it's going to tell Google this user's trying to authenticate, and this app, all it needs to do is access their tasks. Is that okay? And then it's going to ask the user if that's okay or not.
So this is matching up your client secret, your secret ID, with the task API that you want to use with Google. And this broker thing is basically saying, okay, this guy is totally legit and he's allowed to use this.
That's right. So the key here too is anytime you install an app on a lot of platforms like Windows or Android or iOS, they tell you this app is going to access the following items, right? And then you get a list of stuff.
Yeah.
You guys have seen that, right?
Yeah.
So basically what this is doing is I'm using this broker, this special class, to authorize my app. But then I'm telling it that all this app is going to ask for is to access this user's tasks.
Oh my gosh, I get it.
Yep. So I'm just going to list that. And I can put other things in here. I can put Gmail, I can put email, I can put, whatever. I can put whatever I want in this list. But my app doesn't need to access all that stuff. It only needs to access the tasks. So I'm going to just put that.
For example, if I was to download this and I put my information in there to authorize it, it would basically just tell me this app is authorized to use your task list.
That's right. Exactly
That's cool.
right. And yeah.
Now, Lou,
so
we actually have to stop there. So what I want to do is I want to tease them a little bit. So what we've done is we've just given them a way to complete the first 2 steps of the logic tree. So it's going to connect to Google and it's going to authenticate. Now that we know that it's connected and authenticated, what we can do in the next episode is we can show you how you take that now authenticated process and pull in the data into your app off of Google's task service. And that's going to be kind of fun, right, Lou?
Yeah. There's lots of stuff we can do with this now. I mean, like you said, geolocation, images, you get it. You bet.
Yeah. Now, what we're going to be doing over the next couple of days, as we said, we're going to be building up this app. This is the first step. Now that we're connected, now that we know what our process is going to be, Lou is going to help us build every single step of it. We're connected. Next step, let's pull in that data. Step after that, let's turn that data into something that's usable. Step after that is turn that data into something I can interact with. Step after that is let's go ahead and make our app.
Wow, application creation is so much more complicated than I thought it was.
It is complicated, but it's easy if you realize that all you're doing is programming that logic tree.
Right. There's a lot of steps. It's easy to understand the steps when somebody shows you how to do it, but man, it's complicated if you don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Which is why we're going to give you access to all of Lou's code. We're going to show you the logic tree that we created for this particular application so that you can follow it, or maybe you can tweak it. There's people in the chat room who are saying that they would like to add voice annotation. Okay. Add that to your logic tree, use the process that we're giving you, and see if maybe you can make your own version of this new task manager. Lou Maresca, we want to thank you so very much for being our code warrior again. It is always a pleasure, especially when you blow our minds. Could you please tell the folks at home where they can find you?
You bet. So twitter.com/LouMM, and also about.me at LouMM, and of course all my work is on crm.dynamics.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's Mr. Lou Maresca. He's the man who made Windows 9.
That's right.
Which was too good, so they just had to
they just got to get rid of it. Yeah.
Lou Maresca, thank you very much for being our code warrior, and
you.
sir, we salute you. That's a horrible salute. That's a bad salute. Now, you're actually not going to be here next week. You've got this amazing thing going on, so we're going to have to muddle on without you. But it's cool. It's cool because
you guys hold down the fort.
We'll hold down the fort for you. When you come back, we should have something for you to play with. A little something. It should be fun.
Don't worry, I'll watch the episode.
No, I won't. No. Now, if you were watching us live, and if you were just kind of getting buried by everything that Lou was telling you, of course, you're going to want to download the episode so that you can watch it several times. But we also give you the notes and the code that he was actually using. Where can they find that?
twit.tv/code. That's where you can find all the information, including all of our old GitHubs for every single module that we do, as well as the zip files for all the code that Lou has been sharing with us.
Right. We'll be zipping this up just so that you can download it and have all those associated files. It makes it a whole lot easier for you to get your hands on our code. Also, did you know that we've got a G+ community? It's kind of vibrant.
Yes, we do. bit.ly/twitcoding101. Yeah. Definitely join in. It's a great place.
Yeah, and if you put your code examples from each week,
we'll show them.
We'll show them. And Shannon loves going through that group and,
I do.
And finding the examples of people who, especially if you take something that we give you and you go one step further, or maybe tweak it, or maybe show us that we're completely wrong. We love showing examples that are just blowing our minds, our code minds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, we're also on iTunes and YouTube, so search for us in the iTunes video podcasting database. And you can also find us over on youtube.com/twitcoding101. Definitely subscribe. We really appreciate it if you guys do.
And don't forget that you can also find us on the Twitters. That's right. You can find me at twitter.com/PadreSJ. That's at PadreSJ.
And I'm at Snubs.
Yeah. Follow us and find out what we do when we're not coding. It's actually kind of fun.
Like taking pictures of my cats.
She's a fascinating person.
My cats are fascinating.
And she has cats. Until next time. Oh, wait, no. We have to tell them about the live, right?
Yeah, we do live shows.
Yeah, that's right. We do live shows.
Over at live... What is it?
Live.twit.tv.
And you can join in our chat room, irc.twit.tv, so you can join along during the show. We definitely love taking questions from our chat room. So
you guys are down
now and then
there.
You'll see us look down there.
You're right down there. Anytime you see us looking down here,
ask questions.
We're looking straight at you. That's right. Don't forget live.twit.tv, irc.twit.tv, here every Thursday, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Ballecer.
I'm Shannon Morse. End of line.